Okay guys, so before I show you some of the tips on how to airbrush, and I'm going to actually show you a few exercises that will help you with controlling the airbrush, with the paint flow and all that good stuff. Let's talk about the airbrush. Some of the questions that I had were, what kind of airbrush should I get? There are so many different types. There's gravity fed, there's siphon fed airbrushes, and well, I think those are the two main ones. And then of course another question, well, how expensive are they? How much we'll have to shell out? Will an inexpensive one work as well as some of these others, some of the most expensive ones? And what about a compressor? I gotta push a compressor through to get some air, right? So I had all those questions, and I really did some. I did a lot of homework, a lot of research, and this is what I've come up with. Okay, and again, guys, I am not a professional airbrush painter. I have ADD, and so as such, when there's something that interests me a lot, I hyper focus, and that hyper focus kind of gives me the ability to be able to teach myself things. You know, I am self-taught musician. I am a self-taught field service engineer. You know, all kinds of stuff. So if it interests me and I like it a lot, I'm going to learn it. And so I really had an interest in this, and I wanted to do it really bad. So I went and did some research, looked on Amazon, and then looked up some reviews. And I really liked the Master airbrush. This is what I have. This was my first airbrush, by the way. It's a airbrush by Master, and they sell all kinds of levels of airbrushes, but this was my very first entry-level airbrush. It's a basic gravity-fed airbrush, has the little cap, bowl cap on the top. You add your mixture here, and it's called gravity fed because it does exactly that. It takes gravity actually pulls down and puts the paint in the path of the airflow. So, but how does it work? Well, this is called a dual action airbrush, and the way it works is there is a needle inside the barrel of this airbrush, and this trigger is attached to the needle. Now the way it works is this: as you push down on the trigger, it releases air, but does not do anything for the paint, just air. Now if I want paint, I pull the trigger back. The further I pull back, the more paint it will release. And what happens is that needle has a tip, and what it does is that as you pull it back, it allows more paint to mix with the air. The further you pull back, the more paint that you're going to push through, that releasing with that air mixture. So again, press it down, all you get is air. The further you pull back, you get a lot more paint mixing with the air. That's one way to kind of, you know, gauge how much paint you want on a project. But there's still some other factors. How much distance you are away from the subject that you're painting will have a lot to do with how it sprays. But before we get into it, let's talk more about this airbrush. Again, this airbrush I think only cost me about 20 bucks. Very, very cheap. It was my very first one. I still like it. I still use it a lot. And the reason why is because I have a .02 needle. And basically what that is that there's different needle sizes. The larger the size, the broader the stroke. The smaller the size, the more detail and fine your brushwork will be. This one has a .2, and I use this for my very tiny small areas, and I really like this one. All right, now the one that I use almost pretty much almost exclusively, I mean, I kind of interchange, but this one here again is made by Masters. This one cost me a little more. As you can see, it looks similar to the other one, except it has this right here where I can actually control like loosen or tighten the needle. You can see the needle right there, and as you pull back on the trigger, you can see it pulling back on the needle. But this one has a different feature. Matter of fact, Iwata has some very similar features, which I think this was a knockoff of. Iwata is a very good brand. But what this has is it has a paint limiter where it just limits the amount of travel. So you want to make sure, if you want to make sure that you don't want too much paint to coming out, then you can just kind of tighten it a little bit and you'll see, well, that's too much, but you can see it won't travel as much. Back it off further, goes all the way. So it's a good feature, and I kind of like it because, you know, I got fat fingers, sausages, and sometimes, you know, as I'm, you know, pulling back, somebody might accidentally go, wait, I'm like, oh no, I put too much paint, and I do not want that. Okay. Now, just to let you know about the gear that I'm using, again, this is a Masters airbrush, and it came with the hose, but I also have a Masters compressor, an air compressor. You're gonna need a compressor. When I first started out airbrushing, I had just a basic, trying to remember how many, it's a 1 gallon tank air compressor, like the ones that you can get at Home Depot. It was a pancake compressor, is what they called. Very loud. If you live in an apartment, it could be annoying, but very effective. Constant air pressure. Of course, you're going to need, I promise I will learn how to talk. You are going to need to get a water filter, and what that is it's an extra part that you attach to your airline to draw out any condensation, because you don't want water to come through your airbrush. That totally sucks, especially when you're in the zone, you're doing your work, everything's turning out beautifully, and all of a sudden you start seeing splats and splatters and you're trying to wonder what the heck is going on. And what it is that water is because of the heat on the piston inside the airbrush, or I'm sorry, inside the compressor, will start heating up and reacting to the coolness of the air. And so of course you have condensation. Well, that condensation will start building up and it'll come right through the lines and all over your beautiful artwork. Oh, horrible. So a water filter doesn't filter water, it filters water out. Okay, that'll be a good idea to get. This, let me see if I can pull it open here. Just drop something. This is my compressor, and again, this one's made by Master. I like this compressor. It's very mobile. I can take it anywhere. Really simple deal, and it's so quiet. Super quiet. This cost me about 65 bucks. Not bad. The neat thing about this compressor is it is designed specifically for airbrushing. And that's good because the way it works is that it only turns on whenever I press the trigger. So you have a consistent flow of air every time. And I'll show you in a minute how it works. But super inexpensive. I think 65 bucks is a great deal. You have the pressure regulator here. You have your gauge here. It kind of shows you the pressure. Also, the amount of pressure you're blowing through your airbrush has a lot to do with the way the paint will come out as well. The lower the pressure, the better the details. The higher the pressure, the not better the details, but you have a better spray spectrum, I guess is how you could say it. In other words, you have a better coat. In other words, it sprays a lot more even. But if you go really close, you may have some issues. I typically keep it at approximately 25 to 30 psi. That's my even round number. I don't know. I mean, that's about where I leave it at. And I think it works well for me. But that's pretty much it. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of money on an air compressor or airbrush. I think I spent 20 bucks on this and about 40 for this one. Now you can, if you want to really go big or go home, you can do that. Look into Iwata. I highly recommend an Iwata airbrush. You can get them at Hobby Lobby or some of these other places. If you don't have Hobby Lobbies in your area, just look online. Iwata is a highly recommended, great product. It's not as expensive as some of these other ones, and it is a very, very well-known airbrush. And you can get a lot of replacement parts from other, like you can go to a hobby store and find replacement parts for Iwata. On this one, I haven't really needed to get any replacement parts yet, but I imagine I'll probably have to go straight to the manufacturer and get replacements for it. So I don't know. I'm not sure yet. But again, this one has my 0.3 or 0.03. This one has my 0.02. So I use this for fine detailing, and this one for my my general spraying. I have another needle, which is my 0.5, but I don't use it. I kind of like to keep in the smaller numbers, so I get a little better better detail quality. So that's it on the airbrush. The next video or segment, we're going to go ahead and cover the exercises, and hopefully you'll get some out of it.